These people are shy of the World in Action reporter with the poster. The poster advertises family planning. The people are being asked if they'd be willing to display it.
I mean, I think it's a sacred thing.
No, I don't think so. It's a bit gaudy to put in the front window.
No, I don't think I would. Why? I don't like things hung in the window. Well, I mean, the children about 6 and 7 nowadays can read, can't they? I'm just not interested. No. Why? Because I wouldn't.
Why? Why?
Their embarrassment is typical of a majority attitude to birth control. And embarrassment has turned to anger in some cases, now that contraceptive clinics are opening for the unmarried seeking protection against what many refer to as being caught for a baby. Northern Manchester, a Victorian house which has become as improper as Sunday washing. Behind the evergreens and the lace curtains, there's a birth control clinic. But a clinic with a difference, for it's here that the Family Planning Association, founded originally by helpful middle-aged ladies, now sees fit to dispense contraceptives to unmarried girls over 16. The single girls are cautiously segregated from their married sisters who use birth control without any moral slur. A petition demanding closure of this clinic has already reached the Manchester City Council. It has 2,000 signatures on it and speaks of dangers to public health and morality, of venereal disease and promiscuity. The petition was passed to the Lord Mayor, who passed it to the Children's Committee, who passed it to the Health Committee, who are still holding that particular baby. Family planning supporters point to children like these as one of the reasons for their service. These are children whose mothers are getting caught for babies all the time. They weren't planned, they just happened. And the parents made the best of it when they arrived. Most of them are here because of parental ignorance. The children are being taught to play by the social workers of the Family Service Unit in Birmingham. They don't know how to play because they don't have the facilities other children have, like money, space, clothes, toys, and hot water. Their problem was one of the forces behind the National Health Family Planning Act last July. That act tried to make contraceptives available to anyone who needed them by enabling local health authorities to set up their own clinics to help the married, the unmarried, the poor, and the ignorant.
Would you like some now, Carol? Would you like some now? Here, I want to paint a picture. Put it on. You paint a picture. Mummy, you put it on.
In Birmingham, the Family Planning Association is combating ignorance by running a domiciliary service, taking information about birth control into the home. Sister Rutledge is a domiciliary nurse who talks to the mothers and often the fathers about their sex difficulties and birth control. She has come to see Mrs. Rigby, who is 23, with 5 children. Mrs. Rigby's is one of the smaller families the nurse has to deal with.
Did your parents ever tell you anything about sex or birth control at all?
No. Well, it was the kind of thing that you've got to find out, take it from different hints, like, you know, that went on. Or get a book or what you learn from school, but there was no mention of family planning at school, like, you know, and the hygienic lessons or anything like that.
What about things like having a baby? Did you know about that?
No. I got the foggiest idea till I had the first one. I thought they got a pair of scissors and cut you open kind of thing, you know, and until I went to Dudley Road Hospital, you know, doing post-antenatal, and then they explained different things, but then I still didn't understand, because they used that many big words, you know. I just couldn't grasp what it was all about.
When you got married, did you know much about sort of sex and stuff like that?
I knew the dangerous thing was, like, you know, if you went too far, you could get caught for a baby, but that kind of thing, didn't know there's got to be 2 of you. I thought it just got to be a man, that was all. I didn't think that it was on both sides, like.
When you got married first, did you have any idea how many children you wanted to have?
I never really thought much about it at the time, you know. I just, well, it was, I think I wanted about 2 or 3, that was all. But after I had David, I didn't want any more, you know.
How many more did you have after David?
4.
What effect did the fact that you were worried about having more babies have on the sex life that you and your husband had together?
Well, it was nerves, more or less, you know, with both of us. We was both on edge. And I just couldn't be bothered, like, you know. I used to shove him away and turn over and go to sleep. Just frightened, more or less, in case I got caught for another baby. And, of course, it used to make him miserable, and I was miserable, and that was it. We never couldn't enjoy sex life at all. Because the only time that we did enjoy sex life was when I got caught for a baby. That was the only time we ever did. I think it was about once in every 9 months we did enjoy it, but you can guarantee that time that I did get pregnant with another baby. He used to be nervous, you know, and I used to be afraid to smile at him for one reason or another, and that was all coming out, you know. He was very nervous over it, and I was, and had a terrible lot of arguments over it.
What's your position now? You're using some kind of birth control, aren't you?
Yes, I call it a vote.
Are you quite happy about that? Does it give you a sort of relief?
It stops you from worrying, you know what I mean? You know next month that you're going to be all right and that you're not going to have any more for the time being anyway.
But the social problems of birth control are not confined to poor married women. The young and unmarried are physically mature 5 years earlier than their grandparents were. In recognition of this, the Family Planning Association opened this clinic for the unmarried in Northern Manchester.
We've made that appointment at 7 o'clock in the evening. I'm sorry that it's not for so many weeks, but we are completely booked out. Now, you know how to find us, don't you? Right, that's fine. So we'll see you then at 7. Bye-bye.
Sandra Lowe is the branch organising secretary of the association in Manchester. She believes the clinic is a realistic answer to facts like these. 1/3 of British brides are already pregnant when they marry. There are 81,000 attempted abortions every year, and the illegitimacy rate is doubling every 5 years. But even these facts don't make it any easier for the parental generation to accept contraceptive advice for the unmarried.
Teenagers, like everyone else, are bound to observe chastity. There's nothing new about this. Neither is anything new about the way teenagers do behave. But if a clinic is set up which offers contraceptive advice and contraceptives, this will be an encouragement to teenagers to premarital unchastity. Now this we hold to be wrong and sinful.
And our belief is that, in fact, this is not so. That over the vast majority, almost 100% of the patients who come to us, have in fact already had sexual intercourse. Therefore, one is simply trying to avert the further tragedies of illegitimate children, forced marriages, abortions.
There is, I think, on the part of many people, a very Victorian attitude to illegitimacy. An illegitimate child is just as good and lovable as any other child. And a girl who has such a baby should be supported by her parents and by everybody else. There's no stigma on her or on the child. I've every respect for a girl who has an illegitimate child by one man because her feelings get the better of her, but very little respect for a girl who sleeps around with many men and doesn't have any babies because she takes precautions.
I was so shocked when I read about the clinic opening. And I mean shocked, because in this day and age, very little shocks people. But that they were so flagrantly flouting parental control shocked me. There's very little parental control going these days, and when there are some people who are trying to do their best for their children, well, I thought it was diabolical.
Why do you speak so strongly about this?
Because I love children. I've got 3 sons of my own, and I went to a lot of trouble to bring these children into the world. And I'm a teacher, and I'm not in teaching for the financial rewards. I'm in it because I love children. And this could be a good world for children if they were shown how to live in it properly.
It's the abuse of sex that is sinful. You wouldn't expect to give somebody unlimited access to alcohol and then expect them to be responsible about it. In the end, you'll produce an alcoholic. And this is the same thing with sex. You give people unlimited sex without any risk or dangers of unwanted children. And what will you have? People who are sex mad. And that's possibly the way the world's going now.
It's an interesting point of view. I find this very difficult to answer. I think if their daughters want to come to us, this is a decision which they have made.
Giving the contraceptives is just brushing the dirt under the carpet, I think. The right way is to show them how to know about their bodies, how to be knowledgeable about what's happening to them in the stages of growing up, and how to deal with this knowledge, how to deal with their bodies, and to know that they've got somebody who loves them and cares about them to advise them when tricky circumstances come along.
Sex education is entirely left to parents. If the children, or they're not children, if the young people choose to come to us, this is their decision and we must respect it. I'm afraid we can't be blamed if parents don't know what their children are doing. This is not our fault.
When my eldest boy went to the secondary school, we realised that if we didn't tell him the facts of life soon, some little boy in a dirty corner would tell him something. So we went to the trouble of getting a record that was done with our views, brought God into it and love into it, and my husband at the right time took my eldest son on one side, played him this record, talked to him, asked him had any questions, and now he knows all that he is capable of knowing. In fact, really, he knows practically everything about it. And we don't eat, sleep and talk it all day long, but when things that come along, he knows what's going on. And he has, I think, a balanced, sane outlook on this problem.
It's not just their attitude to morality, it's their attitude to the whole of sex and the place of sex in life. And obviously this isn't an attitude which one can change quickly or easily, so we decided to circumvent it.
How do you think this attitude's come about to sex?
Well, I think it's, I mean, who am I to say any more than you? I think it's inherent, it's passed from mother to son to daughter. It's the whole attitude of sex is nasty, sex is dirty, sex is unnatural. And I'm afraid this persists in a lot of people's marriages as well as before marriage.
Another pioneer clinic for the unmarried is the Brook Advisory Centre for Young People in Birmingham. It's run as a charity and has been operating successfully for a year, though it too caused a public row when it opened.
Now, I've got your name and address. Can we write there, or would there be any difficulty if a letter...
Yes, that would be all right to write there.
Right. Now, your date of birth?
The 19th of the 12th, 45.
So that makes you how old?
22.
22. And what's your job?
A civil servant.
Civil servant. Did you come on your own?
Yes, I did.
Did your boyfriend want to come with you or not?
No, I didn't really want him to come either.
No. Do you want me to jot his name down?
No, I'd rather you didn't.
All right. We'll leave it at that then. What sort of advice did you want?
Oh, contraceptive advice mainly.
Right. Let's see. I'll tell you what happens in the centre so you can get an idea of the different stages you go through.
It must be a pretty gruelling experience answering such very personal questions.
Well, part of it is to make them feel at ease. We stress that we need this sort of information, if they're prepared to give it, to give us a picture of them and their circumstances, so that if they have got any other sort of difficulty which isn't presented when they first walk in and say we want this sort of advice, then we can perhaps help them in some other way.
Well, I've been going out with this person for, must be nearly a year now. We had slept together, but neither of us
were too keen on the idea of my becoming pregnant, obviously. And as I say, a friend suggested I came here, and it seemed the obvious answer that I should. And since then, we've slept together, and things seem very much easier.
Do you think many girls could undertake coming to a clinic like this lightly?
I don't think it's the sort of place you're just going to come into and say, I want some pills, and get out again. You're going to have to think about it first. And having thought about it, you realise you've come to a decision. And it's not one you've come to lightly. But I think it's a wise one to make.
Why do you think it's a wise one?
Well, I see quite a lot of illegitimate children, mothers who have a large number, maybe 8 children, by quite a few separate fathers. And this is obviously not the best thing to happen in any case. And I think they, at any rate, could be better with contraceptive advice. And as for myself, well, I don't particularly want any illegitimate children, so I came.
Did you discuss it with your parents or your boyfriend before you came?
Oh, my boyfriend, yes, not my parents.
How did he react to the idea?
Oh, very much in favour.
And your parents don't know?
They don't know.
Do you think premarital sex can be a bad thing?
Well, I don't think it's the best thing to happen, but on the other hand, if you're just going to have sex with one person, then this, I think, presumably you're going to marry this person in the end. And I don't think it's so bad. If you're going to have sex with any number of people, then it is bad. But even so, if you're on the pill or some other contraceptive, at least you're not going to produce a number of unwanted children, which is good.
Do you think girls who are on the pill are encouraged to become promiscuous?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I am. I go out with one person, I wouldn't dream of sleeping with anyone else. It just wouldn't occur to me. I shouldn't want to. So I don't think it does encourage it at all.
We went through a mild controversy in Birmingham when the Brooke Centre started, but everybody's forgotten about it, and it's now a successful fait accompli. And people forget, and once they're faced with a working, efficient organisation, then it's accepted as part of society. Any of the critics of the Brooke Advisory Centre, all I recommend to them is to go along one evening and see the people who go there. They're normal, happy, unmixed up, unneurotic young people. They could be the critic's daughters or the critic's sons.
Councillor Franklin, chairman of the Birmingham Health Committee, will not use the powers given him by the Family Planning Act to help the unmarried.
I think there's too much of this laissez-faire creeping into modern life. It leads to great unhappiness in the case of single girls, and it seems to me single girls ought to have more common sense than to run the risk of having an unwanted child and spoiling their future life in this respect.
Aren't you forced, though, by the Family Planning Act to provide this amenity for unmarried girls?
No, we're not forced. The city councils all over the country have permissive powers to do this if they see fit and not do it if they do not.
Aren't you perhaps reflecting your own sexual attitudes, your feeling about sex in general?
I perhaps am. It's also the point of view of the Health Committee at present in Birmingham. They feel we should support family planning to married people and not to unmarried people. And the letters I've had on the subject from the general public would tend to reinforce this opinion.
Your critics say you're encouraging promiscuity.
Well, this is a terrible word. I'm sure that the establishment play with this word and toss it about salaciously because it conjures up to them enormous orgies. But in fact, promiscuity is very rare. The evidence from the Birmingham Brooke Advisory Centre, which is concerned with the provision of advice, practical help, counselling to the unmarried, whether they're young or old, has shown that indiscriminate promiscuity, and I think you should put an adjective before the word to define it, otherwise it could mean twice or 200 times, indiscriminate promiscuity is very, very rare indeed. And when it is found, it's usually associated with a basic personality disorder, which has to be treated very professionally.
It would appear to me that single people who should exercise a certain discipline till they are married and accept the situation as it is. If they do not accept it, then they must have enough intelligence to be able to look after themselves. Our problem is with the married people.
But however much intelligence one is liable to exercise, isn't there always a problem with the young, especially the very young, that they are more liable to get into trouble than older people?
They would probably still be liable to get into trouble anyway. Assuming we did offer family planning facilities, it might attract even more people into this method of conduct.
But critics of the centre say it's become nothing more than a means of retailing contraceptives.
Well, what's wrong with a contraceptive boutique? This is what the critics say, I must admit, this idea that we're simply providing rubberware or the pill or the cap. But this is enabling young people to act responsibly for the first time. And you've only got to reflect, the male has been able to get his rubberware, his contraceptive, well, for 20, 30 years. And one thinks perhaps that this is part of the story of the emancipation of the woman. Until the woman is emancipated, she won't be allowed the right to have contraceptive advice. Why should she be deprived?
Sex is just one of the things keeping the generations apart. The older want it reserved for marriage, the younger think it permissible before.
For married couples, yes, but not, you know, I just think it's encouraging, no, it's really hard to explain myself, but as I say, for married couples, yes.
Society, after all, still feels guilty about unmarried sex, you know, and if there were no guilt whatsoever, it would be readily acceptable even to those that practice it, and they all feel a little guilty about it.
I don't believe that when this generation grow up, they will be as intolerant as their parents, or many of their parents are. The lack of sex education in schools, the lack of sex education in the home, the embarrassment that everybody feels about the subject is going to dissipate. And I think we are entering a new era. The way in which people communicate, particularly young people communicate, is incomplete unless it's given the seal of sexual contact. I think sex is something that should be developed within a relationship, and I think a relationship is impoverished if it hasn't got a sexual component. This is heresy to many people who have been brought up to believe that sex is something apart.
University of Aston, Birmingham. A last word from the students, the parents of tomorrow. Will they be so liberal 30 years from now?
Where did you first learn about sex?
Oh, it was from my mother before I went to boarding school when I was 11. She sort of got me down on a chair and gave me little diagrams and said, I'll tell you more about it later. And then I went off to boarding school.
Did she tell you more about it later?
No, I'd learned it at boarding school and she never told me anymore.
My parents tended to keep it, I think looking back now, as a hidden dark secret which I wasn't supposed to know about.
Why do you think they felt like this?
Well, I'm not really sure. I can't explain their motives. I suppose it was because of well, just social aspects on their part.
Could you talk to them now fairly openly?
I speak to my father openly now, yes, but my mother is still completely alienated from discussions on sex.
Do you talk about it today with her?
No, not really. No, not at all, in fact.
Would you like to be able to?
Yes, I'd love to be able to, but I don't know, there's such a gulf that her sort of way of thinking is sort of completely different to mine.
Do you think they felt in their generation that sex was something to be enjoyed?
My father did, definitely. He has spoken to me at length on this subject. He said there was nothing wrong with enjoying yourself while you were young, sexually.
But you think your mother didn't feel this?
No, my mother didn't, definitely not.
I come from a pretty large family, and obviously when my mother was pregnant, one wanted to know why she was pregnant, and it just sort of progressed from there. One never had a lesson or sat down and said, I'm going to tell you about sex now, it's all big and new. So it was just quite natural, really.
Do you think you've got a good, open relationship with them now? You can talk about it with them?
With my parents? Well, my mother is very easy to talk to, because obviously she's had that sort of upbringing, whereas I think my father's a bit embarrassed by it.
What do you think your own attitude would be towards your children?
Vastly different to my parents, but yes, vastly different to my parents, but still, you know, you've got to have a sensible attitude on this, and I think I bring them up completely differently.
How?
Possibly by telling them about it, the complete thing, sort of always being able to talk freely to them about it. I think that's essential, because I think sort of one of the sort of disappointing things at the moment is that you just can't communicate with your parents, and it's sort of frustrating for you, and it's frustrating for parents, I'm sure it is.